you guys ever see that meme of like the "it's so over, we're so back" meme? That's kind of been what it's like to be a Doctor Who fan over the past couple of years. For every bit of positive news that we get, we'll get an equally sort of damning comment or statement from someone or another that kind of puts into perspective where the show is at. And I mean, that's what I want to talk about today, because Robert Shearman has been talking to Doctor Who magazine, and I'm sure you've probably seen the quote, but I haven't got around to talking about it yet. And he said something incredibly interesting, and also I think the fact that it was printed in Doctor Who magazine is an indication of things somewhat. We're also going to be talking about Russell T Davies as well. He made a comment recently also, so we're going to be going over those two things. Subscribe if you're new. Also, I'm sorry if people found the last video clickbaity. In my head it wasn't, because I literally recreated the exact same font and announcement sort of image of the official BBC Doctor Who one. So as far as I was concerned, saying it's finally happening to Series 10, which was highly requested by many people for many years, wasn't particularly clickbaity, but I can understand that it's a bit vague. Obviously, there's a part of YouTube where you've got to play the game of clickbait to a certain extent, and I was aware that, the title was ambiguous, but I thought given that that's how the BBC themselves advertised it, I thought it was a fair enough sort of thumbnail and title to do. But in any case, let's just dive right into this. Feel free to subscribe if you're new, and let's just dive right in. Former Doctor Who writer shares bleak outlook on the show's future. Robert Shearman gives his verdict on the long-running sci-fi series. So if you don't know who Robert Shearman is, I mean, who are you, first of all? But Robert Shearman was the writer of Dalek way back in 2005. Prior to that, he wrote Jubilee, which was the story that was eventually adapted into Dalek for New Who, kind of similar to what happened with Human Nature Family of Blood, which was originally a Virgin New Adventure. One of the best New Who stories to this day, one of the best Dalek stories to this day. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. And he's that one guy who wrote one banger and left. And you know what? I respect that. But he has been talking to Doctor Who magazine, mainly about Dalek, about that story, and about his novelisation of Jubilee, which had a really interesting bit that I might cover in a future video. But yeah, basically, he's been talking to them, and he's given his outlook on where Doctor Who is at the moment. Former Doctor Who writer Robert Shearman has offered up his own thoughts about the future of the sci-fi series, and it may come as a shock to fans. In an interview with Doctor Who magazine, Shearman shared about his relationship with the show and said, "I go through phases. I have a real push-pull thing with the show. At the moment, I'm in a pull phase. It's weird because the show is probably as dead as we've ever known it." He continued, "After 1989, we had, for years, a current Doctor. Now everything that is ever going to be produced in Doctor Who terms is going to feel retrogressive. At least with the new adventures in the BBC books, you thought it's the current Doctor, McCoy or McGann. No one is going to start writing Doctor Who books with Billy Piper as the Doctor because no one knows what that means. In a funny way, the closing of Reality War seemed to put a final stop on things. We didn't have that before." Now, it's worth pointing out that the BBC do go on to say in the magazine, or Doctor Who magazine I should say, do go on to say that this is not the view of Doctor Who magazine. We do believe that the show will be continuing, etc, etc, etc. However, the fact that Doctor Who magazine have printed this at all, and have put this in an article in Doctor Who magazine, does unfortunately speak volumes. Now, of course, Robert Shearman himself hasn't really been directly involved in the show for a very long time. However, I do think he makes a very good point. One of the key differences between now and the 90s is the show had a face to lead the merchandise with. In 1989, obviously after Survival, it was Sylvester McCoy. Following 1996 with the movie, McGann would start appearing on all the books and stuff. In 2025, you can't really do that though, because Ncuti Gatwa has regenerated, he has left, and exploded basically into Billy Piper. And of course, you can't do Billy Piper stuff because no one knows what's going on with Billy Piper yet. Arguably, maybe even the people who wrote in that ending don't know what's going on with Billy Piper yet. So how do you expect, the multimedia, the books, the comics, that kind of thing, to do anything with her when it's such a sort of weird grey area? So I think that's a very good point, and I think that's one of the hindrances that the multimedia is going to have going forward in terms of keeping the show relevant, is that they can't, sort of do anything with the current Doctor like they could in the 90s, because there kind of isn't one. Do you know what I mean? Ncuti Gatwa isn't the current Doctor, but Billie Piper also isn't really the current Doctor. This is why, and I think, the more time has gone on, the more I'm kind of this opinion. This is why I was of the opinion that, it would have been better off not having Billie Piper at the end. I do stand by that. Yes, it created, a hype moment for some people, but I think for the vast majority, it didn't really land, and what's the point in a hype moment that you don't know whether it's going to go anywhere? I just think for me, the show would have been a lot more dignified going out without a regeneration or having it fade to black, as was the original plan for something like Power of the Doctor. I think the idea of doing this, especially given all that we know now in hindsight, was just a bad idea. And look, I've spoken before about my conspiracy theory that they might be doing something, or, things might be going on. But I think that if they are, it's going to be very, preliminary conversations. It's probably going to be Russell has put out feelers to Billie Piper and David Tennant saying, how do you feel about this, that, and the other, which is why they looked at each other funny, rather than, me saying, oh yeah, they were going to film stuff next week. So, yeah, I'm not expecting anything soon. I'm just going to put that out there right away. I think the fact that, again, as I said, Doctor Who Magazine have printed this, even though they've said, the BBC are committed to continuing the show, and this is not the view of Doctor Who Magazine, the fact that you've got people saying this, in and of itself, is rather an indictment of our current situation, unfortunately. Same goes for this recent statement by Russell T Davies when he was at the Attitude Awards, where he gave an award, I believe, to Russell Tovey of Years and Years, and obviously upcoming War Between Land and the Sea. Russell T Davies wishes Prince William had a Doctor Who cameo. So yeah, basically, they asked him, because William was on the TARDIS recently, would you like him in it? And he basically went, I wish, but, obviously, pretty hard to do. But the bit I'm interested in is the following bit. Russell also refused to be drawn on whether another streaming service could come in to fund Doctor Who if Disney pull out of the iconic show. Asked if another streamer could pump money into Doctor Who if Disney were to exit the TARDIS, he replied, we're not going there. So I think, Russell T Davies is kind of sick to death of this question, and to be completely honest, I can't blame him. At the end of the day, it's not his decision who takes on the show. It's not his decision whether Disney continue. That's one of the weird things I see about a lot of fandom discourse, is the showrunner gets blamed for absolutely everything. And don't get me wrong, Russell T Davies has definitely made mistakes in this era, no doubt about it. When people kind of hold Russell responsible, being like, why did you partner with Disney? Russell didn't partner with anyone. He was hired by the BBC to run Doctor Who, and they agreed to deal with Disney. Do you know what I mean? I feel like people vastly overestimate the actual power that, showrunners have in negotiations like this. It reminds me a lot of when Stephen Moffat would talk about him getting complaints about the air times for episodes, and he said, I literally have absolutely no control over that. That is purely a BBC decision. The reason why Series 6 is cut in half is because of, the BBC trying to fit around what was going on at the time. I believe it was the World Cup. Yeah, it's just baffling to me when people blame the showrunner for things like, the release time and the streaming service, when that's not on them, it just isn't. Blame them for the writing, blame them for, anything like that, anything on the creative side, the bit that they actually control. But when it comes to, things like, why is it on Disney, or why is it on at this time or this day, most of the time, that's not actually on the showrunner themselves. Even Chris Chibnall wanted to do a Christmas special for, I believe he wanted Revolution to go out on Christmas, I believe. I know it was one of them, but obviously the BBC said that they didn't have the slot for it. So, of course, it was on New Year's Day, which, obviously, the first time that happened, I do believe it was Chris's choice, but then subsequently after that, he did want a Christmas special, but for various reasons, it didn't happen. So that's what I mean. Just when people talk about the showrunner, I do think people are, way too keen just to be like, oh, what about this? And it's it's not necessarily on them to sort out things like scheduling. But that's a long tangent aside. Yeah, I can't fully blame him for being a bit sick of this question. I mean, it must be frustrating for him. Basically, wherever he goes, he's going to be asked this question until Disney kind of give us an answer, which honestly, it's looking like the answer will be no. Quite obviously, I think that's going to be the answer at this stage. And it kind of just sucks for everyone involved in, this production, that not only are they in the dark, but, they have to keep telling people the same thing over and over because Disney won't, sort of come out publicly and say. Now, I want to make it clear, as far as we know, they don't have like a legal obligation to do that. Until War Between Land and Sea airs, they don't have to say anything. But I think it just kind of sucks for everyone involved on the Doctor Who production that they're having to constantly kind of field this question because Disney won't make a decision publicly. I don't think that, I mean, personally, I don't think that this deal was thought through fully on the BBC's end. I kind of feel that if we were going to be in this situation so soon, you know, after just 2 series of 8 episodes, then maybe the deal shouldn't have been negotiated the way it was, or we should have gone with a different partner who would have given us more leeway. I don't know, but yeah, I'm hoping we hear something soon. Being honest, I'm not expecting to hear anything for the rest of this year now until War Between Land and Sea airs. That's been the case for a while. But I kind of do get his frustration, because it's like, what do you want me to say at this stage? You know, he can't say, oh yeah, Netflix are looking at it. Like, of course he can't. You know, it's just a bit of a nightmare. But thank you all for watching. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to give a like. More positive video is going to be coming soon. There's a couple of news items I want to cover that I didn't cover in this video. But to be honest, I want to give my full thoughts on this in detail. Thanks all for watching, and I will see you later.